say no.
Okay. Welcome back to the From the Fabricator podcast. My name is Max Perlstein, and thrilled to have you back with me yet again this month. And it is a dandy, to say the least. I've got 3 sets of guests, 4 people total, that just rock and roll. Starting off with Anas Kassas of INOVUES, then going to Eliot Benor of building envelope testing, and ending with the guys from the drafting marketplace. And this is going to be a blast. I'm thrilled that you're here to check it out. As always, this podcast is brought to you by myglassclass.com. It is the ultimate destination for glass and glazier training. Check it out at myglassclass.com. There's more than 100 courses available, including 60 in Spanish. It's on-demand training. So think about it. You know, you and your folks can train and get that info anytime you need it, 24/7, 365 at your convenience. It's perfect for building new people, re-educating some of the folks that have been there for a while. Check it out, myglassclass.com, from the NGA, made by people in the industry for the industry. myglassclass.com. Okay, great podcast ahead. Really excited about these guests, and some serious interest on a few things, especially retrofit and remodel. Comes up quite a bit. Some deep technical dives, and some really great characters. So here we go. We started off with Anas Kassas of INOVUES. Okay. Kicking it off this month, this is a guy I've been chasing for a while, and I'm thrilled that I could get him on here. It is Anas Kassas, the founder and CEO of INOVUES. That's INOVUES, and you can find them online at www.inovues.com. This is a guy that is changing the game out there, and I'm excited to get to know him a little bit more and him to explain what he's got going. So Anas, thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Thank you so much, Max, for inviting me.
It's great to have you here, and so we're going to get into your company and into what you're doing, but let's start with you, because I think you've taken a really interesting path to get to this spot. Talk to me about, you know, your past, where you grew up, you know, how you where you went to college, and then how you got into our fun little building space.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm originally from Syria, so I grew up in Damascus, got my bachelor's degree in architecture from Damascus University, and then I went to Dubai and then worked for several years, and then moved to Boston, did my master's degree in Boston, and worked in the field. But one of the interesting things is that I didn't only work in architecture, like the traditional sense of the meaning, but I had kind of a deep interest in facade systems since my early days, and especially in kind of in creating sustainable and adaptive architecture by designing dynamic building envelope systems. So my first serious attempt, one of my first serious attempts, was my bachelor's degree project. And that was when I developed a kind of a dynamic system that was awarded in the International Graduate Architecture Award in 2011, and that got me into the space. What I developed was sort of like a double skin facade retrofit system inspired by the shutter mechanism of cameras, and can transform into 108 position to really filter and control light, air, heat effectively, while making the facade kind of like an adaptive and dynamic for the new function of the building. So it was a retrofit for an existing building. That was my project, and I faced a lot of challenges designing that. Designing that. Just, architects, if you know, we're really good at solving problems and kind of being creative and developing something new. But when it gets really too technical, and that's where we don't have all that kind of deep knowledge. So I wanted to work at facade fabricators and learn more about the design, engineering, fabrication, and testing of curtain wall systems, and that's how I started into this multidisciplinary career path.
Wow. So that first attempt, and obviously, you know, you probably got pushback from the people that would have to make it to say, hey, this is a great concept, but how are we going to do it, sort of thing. Is that what happened?
Oh yeah. I mean, if I look back at it, it's a crazy idea. It's hard to actually do, but it was building the first prototypes of it and thinking more, how would things come together, and if it actually makes sense to put these components together, if it works, was really fascinating, and that's why I wanted to kind of get that level of level of knowledge and learn more about these kind of technical aspect of how systems work when it comes to the building envelope. And
Sure.
so I worked for a multinational kind of fully integrated facade and glass fabrication company in Dubai for a couple of years, and really on some interesting projects there. And that taught me the kind of experience to be able to tackle the problem that we're addressing here at INOVUES.
Okay, so let's talk about interviews, because so obviously you had this thirst for retrofit, you had this thirst for energy improvement, so it's kind of like a combination of things. Was it the retrofit or the energy or both, or what kind of got you going in interviews? And then I guess you could just roll right into what exactly interviews is, because that is, why we're here, and it is a fascinating thing that you have created and launched.
Thank you, Max. So in 2015, it was not related. So in 2015, I was kind of in a brainstorming session trying to come up with ideas that could have a big impact. I didn't want to continue my entire career just working on each project as a one-off prototype. Like every time you come to a new project, a new building, you're facing the same kind of challenges almost all over again, and trying to either reinvent the wheel or do the same thing again and again. I wanted to have a solution that could have a bigger impact. I was just basically looking at the windows at my apartment, and I was thinking, how can we transform these windows to make them smart, more energy efficient, but without replacing anything? Integrate the latest technologies. And I started doing some research, and I couldn't find any kind of real solutions that are cost effective and non-disruptive. But that was when I learned about the massive energy efficiency problem of older buildings, existing buildings, and how windows, specifically building envelopes, have a major impact. Up to 40% of the total energy loss in buildings could be attributed to windows, and that there is massive amount of buildings that are still single glazed or even low performing double glazed. So you're talking about up to 70% of all buildings still have kind of obsolete window systems. So that was interesting to see, and that's when in architecture school you focus on creating a new building most of the time, and we're a little bit unfortunately ignoring the big problem, which is existing buildings.
Absolutely.
So that's where I kind of started working on developing a solution that is cost effective, non-disruptive, that makes sense for building owners to do, because full replacement is just very expensive. It's a very massive undertaking. That does not yield good financial kind of returns, in a sense that makes it possible to do as an energy retrofit. Unfortunately, it happens only if the facade is beyond repair, or if it's a complete repositioning project. Right. And that if we're trying to improve the performance of 98% of the buildings, that's not going to work with the full replacement. So that was kind of the beginning of that journey, trying to come up with a solution for it.
And so now you have the solution, and that's what INOVUES does, correct?
Yes, exactly. And to kind of talk and explain a little bit what we do, in short, we came up with a technology that enables integrating a new glass panel into existing facades and windows, and turn them from, let's say, single pane to double pane, or double to triple or multi-pane, in a very cost-effective way, without having to remove, replace, drill, or alter anything at all. It can be done from the inside, from the outside, without disruption. You're using the existing facades as part of the solution. So you're utilizing 70% fewer materials from the beginning. You're eliminating the cost for demolition and disposal of the existing window systems. So you're upcycling the windows instead of throwing them into landfills. It's a lower carbon solution. The systems are prefabricated, so you're cutting installation cost. And the owners don't lose, income from rent, or productivity from occupants having to vacate the perimeter spaces. So it's a very cost-effective solution. Basically, the result in comparison to a full replacement is we're reducing the cost by up to 90% of full reclad or replacement of window or curtain wall systems. And the payback can be as short as 3 years versus 50, sometimes 100 years for a full replacement. So that's kind of in short
nice.
what the value proposition is.
It's impressive. And if again, I'm with Anas Al-Kassas, the founder and CEO and also CTO at INOVUES. And if you go to his website at www.inovues.com, that's INOVUES.com, you'll see, and that's the first thing that I had noticed way back when I met you for the first time, was you had completed, I believe, a job in Seattle. Was it Seattle?
Yeah.
And it was like you showed the job before and then the job after, and here you upgraded this building dramatically, but the look was fantastic. It was seamless. And I think that was the thing that probably scared people in the beginning, is like, what are you going to do with this approach? And I think you guys have kind of nailed the best practice here. And so that's got to have you pretty excited with the way things have gone quickly out of the gate for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's you can preserve the look of the very compact, and it has a glass-to-glass edge, frameless look. But also, we've been having some interest from building owners looking to reposition buildings in the market. So change the look, change the aesthetic, kind of overclad the entire facade without having to replace anything, and change the perception of the building in the market as an upgraded, more energy efficient.
That's perfect. So how so far it has been the overall reception been? Anything surprise you as you've gotten? How old is the company at this point? I forgot to ask that. How old is the company, and how's the reception been?
So, founded INOVUES in 2017. First, we launched in 2020 the beta version of our product. So I've been for the past 3 years doing pilot and demonstration all over the country, and the perception. I mean, the idea is great. People, can you actually do that? Is it possible? So at the beginning of when we were looking to secure funding to do the R&D and testing, there was a lot of skepticism especially from people, already talking to investors outside the industry, and you're telling them, for example, you're using silicone or basically adhesive to secure glass. They don't realize that a lot of the buildings today, they're using either four-sided SSG, structural silicon glazing, or something like that. So it was interesting at the beginning to hear the feedback and try to explain things to people that are not from the industry. But once we got into doing the tests, doing the installations, and now we have a great track record. All this installed since December 2019 at Saint-Gobain's North America Research Center with no issues at all. So that was now it's great. The impact on energy, on thermal comfort, acoustic comfort, that people can continue to work and live inside as normal and not notice anything change in the building. So
and that's huge. That's huge. So all right. So I want to break things up a little bit. Go to a fun one, and this one was a curious one for me because I've never asked this question. I've had some fun questions, but this is a new one. How do you de-stress and relax? Because I know how hard you work, and especially when you're launching a business, I'm sure there's no time to probably distress and relax. But do you find any time, and how do you do it?
Yeah, it's you're always on technically. It's like a 24/7 gig, but I try to keep time for going out and taking a walk at least once a day.
Nice.
At the beginning of the day or at the end of the day. I like to work out as well, so being active really helps to de-stress, but it's not easy. Yeah, I can tell you that.
I mean, starting a business is tough, and starting one that's really kind of a disruptor like yours is, and I know you also are talking to people from all over the world, so you're not working 9 to 5 because there is no 9 to 5, because you're dealing in a 24-hour world. So I give you credit for getting the walk in and getting the workout in. You're in good shape, good looking guy. You got the world by the tail here. I like that. So very cool.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Max.
All right, a few more questions because I know you're a busy guy. I was just saying that. What's next? What are the next steps in the growth and the evolution of INOVUES? What are you looking at?
So we're right now at a really big inflection point, as I mentioned. So for the past couple of years, we've been focusing on small scale kind of demonstration and pilot projects. We've done a number of those in different climate zones, different locations in the US. And now we're getting a lot of traction in the market. We're at a point where we're looking to partner with a lot of folks from the industry to be able to execute these projects and scale up the execution and operations of the company.
Nice.
Yeah.
Again, with Anas Kassas from INOVUES, find them online at INOVUES.com. That's INOVUES.com. Great website. A little bit off the beaten path. I gave you an outline, but I'm just curious, when you look at the retrofits, especially you guys are based in Houston, and you look at those old buildings from the 80s, it's got to make your mouth water to say, this is what I built this company for. Is that kind of, you're probably driving by them every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's like becomes a hobby. You see a building and that's like a perfect fit for what we do. And it's coming. I mean, it's you see the momentum happening in certain locations in the US where there are a lot of movement around energy efficiency retrofits and decarbonization in general, where utilities are offering significant incentives. And now with the Inflation Reduction Act, there's significant tax deduction on a federal level. So it's happening, and you have decarbonization laws now in the Northeast, New York, Boston, and California, and everyone else is like following suit. So it's a really, there's a big demand for it. There's a lot of buildings would benefit from this, and we're working on some really interesting kind of business models where we make this, dramatically attractive for building owners from day one. So where everywhere, even if the energy prices are not that expensive, it'll still make sense to improve and reduce your energy consumption and carbon footprint.
Absolutely. And you brought up a good point. You guys are eligible. You fall under the Inflation Reduction Act, the tax credit in there. And that's huge, obviously, for a company like yours. That has that evolved? You probably were like, thank goodness that like played right into your hands.
Yeah, and there's not only tax credit. So there's tax credit for integrating some of the smart glass technologies. There's a tax deduction for improving the efficiency of existing buildings. This is new, was not available before. So that's huge. You can get up to $5 a square foot of the total building area to improve the performance of the energy of the building. So that's a big deal.
And just out of curiosity, from a glass standpoint, you're not locked into, like you said earlier, a building owner wants to change the look of the building, and if they want a certain style, certain color, certain look, certain performance, you can do that because you're agnostic at that point. You're just more about the system, correct? Or am I reading that wrong?
Exactly. Think of what we're doing more of a platform. So it's agnostic to what glass we add. So we work with all the glass suppliers, glass fabricators, and we can integrate almost any option that's available.
Fantastic. I got one more question for you. Again, I'm with Anas Kassas, founder and CEO and CTO at INOVUES. Find him online at www.inovues.com. That's INOVUES.com. Really neat stuff. A very good website. So last question. I know how busy you are. I've gotten you to come to at least one industry event. You spoke at BEC a couple of years ago. Will we see you more at more industry events and getting you active? We need your brain power at our stuff.
Absolutely. Love the events, the BEC, the Glass Build. Would love to participate in all of them.
Good. All right. I'm taking that down. We're putting that. That's he'll be there. That's big. Because I do think I think you've got something really cool here, my friend. I'm very excited, very bullish on this. And I really think you've nailed something huge. Retrofits are more than 50% of new construction going forward. We've got those bad inventory buildings, that were built in the 80s, which, for me, I grew up in the 80s. 80s were 40 plus years ago now. They're old buildings.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think you are headed in the right track. So I'm very, very pumped for you, my friend.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Max.
Thank you for being here. And we look forward to seeing you in the fall Glass Build, if not sooner. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Okay, next up on the From the Fabricator podcast, I'm thrilled to have Eliot Benor on. He is the managing member at Building Envelope Testing. You can find them online at www.bet-na.net. That's bet-na.net. And Elliot and I have only talked over email, so this is the first time he and I are actually getting to chat verbally and in person. Elliot, thanks for doing the pod.
Thank you for having me.
It's a thrill for me to have you. I've heard a ton about you. We've gotten exchanged a few emails. Your reputation is spectacular. So this is going to be a fun one for me to be able to kind of pick your brain. And so let's really just start there. I'd love to know a little bit more about you again, since we talked a little bit just for perspective for the audience. I wanted to get Elliot out to BEC. He was one of the folks that were there, 25 years ago when it first started, and he was very involved, and wanted to get him out this past year, and we couldn't make it work. But that's when I got to really get to know him. But I don't know your background, don't know where you were born, and so on. So let's start with there. Where were you born, grow up? Your background, please.
So I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, as most people can usually tell from my accent. I went to school there. I grew up there, and moved around a little after that. Wound up back in New York, working as a machinist. Believe it or not, was ready to spend my entire life working in a factory. As a matter of fact, my brother and I, Maurice, who people might know, he's been the Graham sales rep for the New York City area for a long time. We were all set. We had a deposit on a loft in Newark, New Jersey, to set up a little machine shop. And a friend of ours came to us and said, "Why don't you guys come work for me for a while? I'm in the window business. You might like it. You won't be in a factory all day. You'll get to see people, be out in the fresh air." It sounded great. We got into it. He had a nice little business. He did replacement windows for commercial buildings in New York. And he also did repair work, which I found really interesting because, back then in the late 80s, early 90s, the market was cheap replacement windows. They were going in like crazy.
Yeah.
It was right after the oil embargo in the 70s, and everyone was getting money to change their windows. And they had a 8 to 10 year lifespan. So in 8 years, IG units were going bad. Balances on double hungs were all failing. All the hardware was going bad. And this guy found a little niche that we thought was great. The partnership never worked out. Maurice and I decided to give it a shot on our own, and we started just doing that repair work. We were doing everything, IG units, all the hardware, a little bit of replacement work here and there. And I have an article I wrote on LinkedIn called Saturday Morning Coffee.
Yeah.
It tells a little story about how we started and how we originally met Graham Architectural, and then that led to a bunch of other window companies that we would do service work for. And eventually we had a lot of trouble getting light gauge IG units. So nobody really was very good at producing, delivering window glass IG units because they break very easily. So we had to get to the point where we could produce our own. And we did. And because we both had manufacturing and machining backgrounds, we'd go to the local manufacturers who were making windows and had a piece of garbage sitting in the back lot that was a washing machine or a sealing machine. And we just buy it for nothing and fix it. And that's how we started making insulated units. We really learned from them.
Yeah.
It was pretty good. And we eventually secured a contract with the city of New York, with the New York City Housing Authority, to supply them with replacement glass.
Nice.
Doesn't sound like a big contract, but in, the mid 90s, $1 million a year contract in replacement glass was big.
Yes.
And one thing led to another, but we were always the cheapest guy. That was our, young man's business sense, was how can I get more work by beating the other guy's price?
Right.
And we discovered, and it stayed with me, that isn't the best business philosophy to have. And that really taught us both lessons. We were in it for over 10 years, and I can honestly say we didn't make any money doing it for 10 years. And we decided one day that we were tired and we weren't going to do it anymore.
Sure.
And Arthur Berkowitz was a friend, and we called Arthur, and I called Chuck Kaplanik.
Yep.
And
Floor
said,
glass.
"You know what? We're done. You guys come over, take a look, and make us reasonable offers before the auction. whatever you guys don't want, we're going to auction off. We did, settled all our debts, and moved on to the next stage in our lives.
Gotcha.
He went to work for Graham. He's been there for about 18 years. I went to work for the local EFCO rep in New York City, a fellow named Ed Budney.
Okay. Okay.
He was the biggest rep for EFCO for like 10 years. He had all those high rises you see in New York City.
Yeah.
EFCO was a great place to learn, and I learned a lot there. I worked there when Jack Apple was still vice president and Mark Kaiser was still there.
Right.
I'm sure you've heard those names.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And I learned a lot from them. Mark, I still consider Mark a friend today. And, you know, EFCO really what got me on the road to learning more and more about fenestration. And it was a great place. We used to have books this thick, engineering training manuals and customer information manuals, and they'd run training seminars twice a year, like Cornier used to do, and YKK. They all used to do that. It lasted a few years, and I got an offer from a local facade consultant named Israel Berger.
Yes.
And I went to work for Israel Berger and Associates, and another great opportunity. I worked with Israel. I worked with a gentleman named Bill Logan. People don't know that name, but from Petronas Towers to 100 other major projects, he was the guy in the back room with the people from SOM, HOK, sketching the mullions, doing the layout, figuring out how the curtain wall worked. That was truly an opportunity for me. Unfortunately, I found out, although I loved the work, I wasn't a very good consultant. The money side of it didn't work that well to me. And I was approached by a small Canadian company called Fulton Windows.
No.
Mississauga.
Yep.
I had met their chief engineer, a gentleman named Werner Cloak, and he impressed me. I can't say enough about Werner. Fulton was probably the first company that I knew of that was selling a unitized system to dealers in this country.
Right.
To that point, there was plenty of unitized companies, but they were all direct to market. So a glazing contractor couldn't buy a unitized system from Cornier the way they can today. So I looked at that as the opportunity to work with Werner and to be able to maybe blaze a trail for unitized systems down here. And it went really well. I was with them for about 10 years. Learned a tremendous amount. I cannot tell you, Werner is one of the godfathers of curtain wall. He really is. He was there at the beginning with Laura Lee, which was a PPG division up in Canada. You know, we look at unitized systems and you say, well, that one's a Perma system, that one's a Canadian system, this one's a German system with all the crazy gaskets. And you know, it's very distinct. And today I see most of the systems are really evolving towards the Canadian style of doing a stack joint.
Sure.
And that's because they were really good at it and they understood it very well.
Yeah.
Oldcastle decided to buy Fulton Windows about
15
years ago.
Yep.
I am not the corporate guy. I lasted about 6 months with the Oldcastle management and I was done. So I spent the next I had done well. We went from a $12 million company to a $30 million company at 40 million. I don't remember what we were at the end, but we grew many times over.
Yep.
So I did well, and I spent the next few years figuring out what I was going to do. And a couple of my customers had, you know, New York was busy. A couple of my customers was early 2000s, mid 2000s. Tons and tons of window wall and curtain wall jobs going on in New York. A couple of people that were my customers had major mock-ups going on and really didn't have the wherewithal to run the mock-ups at the lab.
Right.
So it was an opportunity for me, and I took it on and made a business out of it. I worked out a deal with labs in York and got a small discount from what they would charge a client. Use that to make a profit, and then marked up things. We take care of everything. I take care of the hotel rooms for the iron workers.
Yeah.
It was literally a package deal. And that was working out really well for me for about 3 or 4 years until another corporation took over the company.
Yeah.
And Intertech bought them out,
Right.
and that was the end of that deal for me. And so I went back to those same customers and I said, listen, if I start a small field testing company and I'm the same price as they are, would you give me the work? I'll service you better. And they all did.
Yeah.
It literally started out with me in a van, built some testing equipment, and 8 years later we have 12 people. We've done some very recognizable projects, and I'm very happy to say that we're a small family niche operation.
Yeah, you told me that in one of our notes back and forth, you consider it like a boutique testing operation.
Exactly.
But I mean, you're doing intense work there. You know, you're definitely not doing garden variety testing. I mean, you have the ability to
No.
do everything under the sun and then some, correct?
Yeah, it was out of necessity. We weren't getting those two double hung windows in a garden apartment. We were
Right.
getting, the one you see in the background of my screen is 5 Manhattan West, which is an old Grace building that had a slanted curtain wall,
Yeah.
and now it's segmented and slopes back in segment. It's a permasteel job. It was one of the first jobs we ever did. The test chamber was 30 feet wide, 2 stories tall, and the
Wow.
spray rack is hanging on that man lift,
Yeah.
and it's bent. I don't know if you can make it out,
Yeah.
but it's bent. And we actually partnered up with a lab out of Quebec. Back then, it was known as CLEB. Today,
Hmm.
it's UL. So
Okay.
UL was my first customer back then,
Nice.
and this was our trial by fire. This is the first one, and we said if we could do this, we can do them all.
Way to start off with a tough one. It definitely wasn't
Yep.
a piece of cake to start off with.
No, it wasn't. It
Wow.
wasn't.
No cupcakes for you. So that's for sure. This has been great. This is great. So I'm with Eliot Benor, managing member, building envelope testing. And if you want to learn more, check them out at www.bet-na.net. And again, from the testing standpoint, so you serve serve basically anybody with a need. Is it just New York City area, or do you go, or is it throughout the Northeast or the country? What's your geography there?
So we've been down to DC and Philly and up as far as Boston, not on a regular basis. It has to
Okay.
be the right projects. But yeah, the New York City metropolitan area, I would say. I live up in Poughkeepsie, the Poughkeepsie area, so we're up here every once in a while at the universities,
Sure.
and we've done work in New York State. We do a lot of stuff in the Gold Coast of New Jersey, which is booming right now. And yeah, so it's mostly that area. And hopefully one day we'll expand out a little bit. But you know, in my 50s, I have a much more tempered desire to expand quickly.
Sure, sure. Yeah, you've seen you've been through some different wars for sure. So you're using that experience. And it's funny. I've always considered you, just from reputation, and then finally getting to meet you, as one of the godfathers of curtain wall. And I know you've pointed to other people, but what you've been able to do, and especially those of you watching this on the YouTube feed, and you see the project behind him. I mean, that thing's a bear, and you've been able to do so many different and neat things, and advise people, test people, just from a resource standpoint. I'm curious though what your thoughts are on how things are going in the marketplace. You mentioned, the kind of the trend looking more at the Canadian sort of style of unitized, but what's your take on the overall product development in our space these days?
So, our industry, I would say our industry has had some issues with embracing technology and adopting it quickly.
Yes.
I mentioned that I was manufacturing IG units. I remember when no one was using low E, and
Right.
all the
I do
phone
too.
manufacturers
Yep.
spent billions putting pyrolytic coating on the end of their float lines, on every single float line, because it made sense from a business point of view, right?
Yeah.
It's a vertically integrated, cost them almost nothing to apply pyrolytic low E, and the consumer gained so much from it, so it was a no-brainer. but it literally took, and you remember this,
Oh yeah.
a glass shortage in the 90s for the manufacturers to say, hey, we will not sell you a case or a stose of clear glass unless you buy an accompanying low E
Yep.
with it.
Yep.
And, I know you guys had some more power than I did, but I was a 1 or 2 truckload a week purchaser. I had no sway over LOF and AFG. I had to do whatever they said. And it just speaks to our lag in adopting things and maybe in being tactical and not strategic. And that's a lesson I learned a long time ago. And I think I hope that our professional organizations like NGA and FGIA start thinking more strategically. Right now, we get pushed by the government and the energy code.
Yeah.
We should be pulling them with us, not letting
Right.
them push us to make the changes. We should be adopting good technology that's cutting edge because it's all value added, right? And it
Yeah.
all addresses one of the big things that I'm excited about is retrofit work.
Yep.
Everyone's talking about it, recladding, reskinning. It's at I'm sure it was at BEC this past, there's a lot of buzz about it. It's big. We need to be able to do it. We need to be ready for it. We need to have products that will honestly give people what they're looking for. And what they're looking for today is an energy efficient skin. They
Yeah.
need a facade that's energy efficient, that's upgradable, that will last. There's a bunch of things. We partner with some of the larger GCs like Turner on a lot of these what they call repositioning projects, which is taking an existing building that's beat up, 40 years old. It's occupied, but it's not really getting the rents that they should be getting, especially the office buildings. And Turner acts as a program manager, not just Turner, Tishman, Suffolk, they all do it. We've worked with most of them. And they will put together a team that will go to the owner and say, hey, this is where you're at. We'll do this with you. We'll partner with you to work on this. We'll bring in the architects, the engineers, everyone. And it's just not just the facade. It's the facade, the mechanical systems, the integrated high-speed internet in the buildings, all the data systems, and they really do, and it pays. We just completed one 2 years ago, and it totally transformed this building. It was already considered a Class A building. I don't know what it's considered now, but the client, which is the client we just finished putting a proposal together for in a building down the block from this one,
Nice.
is so thrilled with what they've got now and their bump in rent roll and profitability of the building.
It's huge. That's huge. And just so you know, the guest before you is a guy named Anis Kassas, who is from a company called INOVUES, and they're focused completely on retrofit. And so it's funny that you brought that up. It's ironic because we're definitely on that retrofit trend. And then being in New York, you've got local law 97, which, you did talk about the push and the pull. That's going to pull people because they don't have a choice. They have to upgrade the buildings.
Exactly. And what I like about that is the energy, and I was on the New York City Energy Code Revision Committee. So I worked with the DOB in New York to rewrite the energy code last cycle. And we're going to have lots of code changes, believe me. Whether or not they will accomplish what we need to accomplish, you reach a diminishing return, point of diminishing return at some point. I don't know how much more than R30 or R40 we need out of our walls. The problem is we put an R3 hole in that wall and we call it a window. And we need to start getting our, embracing VIG. One of the previous podcasts you had Mike Spellman and Art Heward. And look, Mike stuck with it for a decade, right?
Yes, he did.
Couldn't sell VIG to anybody. And now it's on the top of everybody's list of what they're looking at. Stuff is the same as it was 35 years ago when Dr. whatever his name was first really invented it, or when Twindo, which really wasn't vacuum insulated glass, but was sort of vacuum insulated glass, which was an American invention. Everyone thinks land glass and they're the inventors of it, but really it was technology that we developed in this country in the 60s. and we're just bringing it back now. But
It definitely perfected now. I mean, Land
yes,
had took it and perfected. Michael Spellman was a huge driver in that perfection of it.
absolutely.
And you're right. The guy lives and breathes the VIG aspect of things, and and now there's some additional folks, but I think that's about to take off. Just because the hunger's there. You made a comment about that R3 hole. At least now you can maybe take that R3 hole and change it to R14 or R20 with a VIG unit in there.
Yes, absolutely. And people think the cost of VIG is high, but what it can do for performance, it's not. You can't get that performance unless you start triple glaze, double OE, and then you have all kinds of other issues with weight and thickness and green glass and everything else.
Yeah,
It's
no doubt.
my
And
hat's off to him.
I saw a statistic recently about that. An R4 window is X amount per square foot, and an R14 VIG is X amount of square foot, and basically it's the same price per R rating. So when you add it out, when you divide the 14 by the cost, or you divide the 4 by the cost, it's the same cost per R.
Yep.
So that you are staying right on track there, and I think that building owners have to get that through their head. And I'm thrilled. I did not know you were involved in the code process. I knew you've got your hands on everything just from everything I've heard about you. So it's pretty cool you were involved in the whole local law 97 that everyone talks about these days.
So local law 97 actually hit us pretty hard because we were in a 3-year process of rewriting the code, and the people from DOB would give us updates and say, well, we don't think this is actually going to happen. It's the politicians writing it. They're not really getting us involved, blah, blah, blah. Next thing we know, and I remember the date because it's my oldest son's birthday, April 18th, the mayor got on the news and talked about the no glass and steel skyscrapers, that famous
I remember that
press conference he
Yep.
had. And I went to the meeting the next day at DOB, and everyone looked like they just got delivered terrible news, because this literally negated everything we'd just done for the last 3 years. It didn't, but we thought it did at the time. But what it does do is it doesn't attack solely new buildings.
Yeah.
And that's so important. Our existing building stock is tremendous. If we're gonna reach no matter what side of the whole global warming thing people come down on, when it costs $800 to heat a 4-bedroom house or a 3-bedroom house a month,
Yeah.
you have to do something.
Yes.
And they're not making any more gas, coal, or oil. So it's a limited resource, and lots of it is controlled by people that don't like us very much. So we need to really look at it and say, what's the most effective way? The most effective way with the current capacity we have to transmit electric and build solar panels and windmills is improve our existing stock, make our buildings more efficient.
Yeah.
You can put in the best high performance boiler, and if your windows and walls leak, you're still leaking heat and cool air out of that building.
Right.
So the first place to start, or at least to consider, is the skin of that building. And that's our role in those projects that I was telling you about. Some of them have been very, very large, is to do that initial analysis on the existing facade and say, hey, your walls are doing this, they leak this much air, thermally, this is where you're at. That's been a focus for us. After that experience on the Energy Code Committee, I realized this is the future. This
No
is
doubt.
where we have to concentrate.
And you're dead on. And the one thing I said to Anis in the last piece was, he's in Texas, and I said, you look at all those bad old 80s buildings in Houston and Dallas, that are all failing at this point, window wise, glass wise. So the timing's perfect for them down there, and they don't have what you have up there, but it's just a matter of time. So this is good. This is good. So I am with Eliot Benor, managing member, Building Envelope Testing. See them online at www.bet-na.net. And just lighten things up, curious, a fun question for you. If you had to turn back time, go back to 18-year-old Eliot, and this is before you and your brother started the machinery. You started before you were doing insulated, rescuing old washers, and there's probably an old Bilco that you ripped all the rust off of and rebuilt. Before you did all that, would you change anything? If you got back to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell Eliot to do going forward?
Take the blue pill.
Take the blue pill. All right. So yeah, you're happy, you're content. You're rolling with whatever came.
I really am. I have to say, it took me a long time to get to the point where I figured out what I was good at and what I really wanted to do. And I have colleagues that tell me this all the time. When I started the testing business, they said, this is what you should have been doing for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
It fits you perfectly. But, you don't know, you have to just live it. And that's what we do. We live and we hopefully find the right path.
And I'm a believer, if you didn't have that experience at FCO and you didn't have that experience at Fulton and then the short time at Oldcastle, you probably aren't as well-rounded as you are now, because it opened your eyes to different things you'd never see, probably just because of their corporate structures.
100%. I was the butt of many jokes back then for the amount of times I changed business cards, but something in the back of my mind always said, you know what, the opportunity to learn and to be exposed to people who really know. I heard this story about Max Planck, about real knowledge versus fake knowledge.
Yeah.
And it's about him. He was a very famous scientist, and he was traveling all over Europe giving lectures to scientists. And his driver was with him and listened to every lecture. And he said, I could do the next lecture for you if you want. And he said, okay, go ahead, do the lecture for me. So the chauffeur gets up and does the whole lecture, and someone asks him a question out of left field. And the driver says, I can't believe that someone from such a prestigious institution would ask me such a silly question, because he only had a certain amount of knowledge. And
right.
We aren't born with it. People are so lucky today. They have the internet. They have the world in the palm of their hands.
Yeah.
Every bit of knowledge is there if you really want to look for it. But there's no replacement for the gray hair and the experience. There really isn't.
Yeah, no doubt. And that leads me really perfectly into my next question. With all of your experiences, anything really surprise you anymore? I mean, you're dealing with crazy things, crazy structures, and you name it. But anything surprise you out there?
People. In a good way, because
okay.
I'm very involved with FGIA. I'm on all the method of test committees at the AMA level. I don't really get involved with the glass stuff as much, but I'm at the AMA, I'm at ASTM, and everybody's there, and they have their view of how things should be and what's important to the world, even though sometimes the world is the four walls that you're in.
Right.
And we go head to head with a lot of people. And sometimes it gets pretty contentious in some of these meetings. And then I go to a dinner honoring one of these people, and I find out all of the wonderful things they do for children, for animals, for everyone. And I'm like, you know what? I have to keep that in my mind when we get at each other, that these are really, really good people. And our industry is really full of some great, great people. And that's what surprised me more than anything. Every time I go to a retirement dinner or a testimonial for someone, I'm like, I've known this guy for 20 years and I didn't know any of these things about him. And it's really, it's a pleasure to find those things out.
It truly is. And I love, that's the best thing I love about our space, is when you get to know the people, along the way, whether it's during the way or as they retire, and you find out about everything that they do is spectacular. And that's why I love the space, and have been in it to win it for all this time, and will continue to do so. So obviously, since you're so connected into the code side of things, this is a real big question for me. What is your thoughts overall on the present building codes? Good enough? Not good enough? Can we get better? Are we headed in the right way? Are we measuring things the right way? Your overall thought on that space?
So we have a pretty good building code now, and if people would build to it 95% of the way,
right,
we'd be building very good, very energy efficient buildings. Is there room for improvement? Of course there is. We can do a lot better at certain things. Fenestration is one of the spots where code officials have been afraid because they don't understand it. And part of the reason that they don't understand it is the way we measure things is not really correct. One of my pet peeves is U factor versus U value.
Yeah.
So as an industry, we came up with this term for thermal transmittance called U factor. U factor isn't the same as U value. People
Right.
think it is, they use it interchangeably. But if you look at a Warsaw test report, it always says U factor. It never says U value. Because they know it's not a physical measurement. It's not a true metric of how that window's performing. It's a guide for an architect who doesn't understand what a BTU is or the impact of 1/10 of a BTU. And I speak to glaziers all the time that tell me my submittal was rejected for 1/10 of a BTU, and I can't explain it to them. And I get it, because people do not understand what those numbers mean.
Right.
And this is where we have to really, this is one of the places we have to improve. We lose energy through buildings or gain energy through buildings, depending on which part of the country you're in, 3 ways: solar heat gain, air infiltration, and heat loss through conduction.
Mhm.
So U value, R value, and air leakage. Those are the 2 big ones that we can do something about. A few years ago, actually in 2019, before COVID, just as I was finishing up my work at the DOB, I realized that measuring these things accurately is going to become more and more important, because we had tons and tons of case studies where deep energy retrofits were performed and energy savings were modeled, and then the actual numbers were 30 to 40% off what the models said they were going to be. And I think that's happening today, and even more because we're doing more energy modeling now. And that's because the way we measure things, for instance, a regular air infiltration test is done at 624 or 1.57 PSF. That's 20 and 50 mile an hour winds. No one really needs to measure air leakage at a 50 mile an hour wind.
Right.
It's good for you to know that the window is going to give you a good long service life, but for energy calculations, it doesn't help you at all. So we started working on methods and equipment to be able to measure air leakage at very low air pressures, very, very accurately, to determine not only the windows, but the whole wall, and today, whole buildings. How are they functioning on a normal day when it's a 4 to 6 mile an hour wind? And how will they function through a range of winds? So we developed this modified version of the ACM test method. It's a multi-point increasing pressure that we measure the leakage at, and it gives us a very, very accurate graph that we can then use or give to an engineer to use to match it to their weather model. So if the 3 o'clock hour on May 22nd has a 6 mile an hour wind, we can tell them the air leakage at 6 miles an hour. If tomorrow it's windy and there's a 25 mile an hour per wind, this model will give them that leakage at that model. And with today's computer program power, you can use that to actually tell you what the energy cost is of the air leakage. And the other one that we had to work on was the actual conductive loss. So the heat loss through the fabric of the wall and the windows. And we started working on a proprietary system we built. We started off working with Virginia Tech to develop sensors and a sensor data logging system to measure heat flow through windows and walls. And we reached the point where Virginia Tech was kind of stuck and moved to Texas Tech.
Yep.
Texas Tech helped us get over the next hump we were at. And today we're 100% in-house developing the system that will actually has a set of sensors that will put, say, on a window in 12 or 14 places on the window. And similar to how you model where we weight average the different areas of the window, we'll measure those areas and construct a weight averaged model that uses the actual watts of energy that passes through the glass, the frame, everything,
Nice.
and use that to actually give people what their true U value is of that window.
That's some deep accuracy, which we need.
We need it, and we're trying to get it to the scale where we can commercialize it and get it in the hands of engineers, architects, and even glazing contractors that can use it all over the country, all over the world, because if it goes the way we think it can go. We're on our fourth or fifth iteration of the system now. And we've used it on a bunch of buildings. One was the main office building for the city of New York, the 1 Center Street, the Dinkins building. If it goes the way we think it will, it'll be affordable. It'll cost about what it costs to do a model.
It's great.
And you'll have actual numbers from the actual windows. And right now the problem is we have to educate the mechanical engineers, because they need to use this data to design the whole building system.
Correct.
Around what we have.
And it's obviously everything takes a step-by-step process, but it sounds like you're not too far off.
No, and we've done it all. We bootstrapped it. We didn't get any money from the government for it. We didn't get any assistance from the government for it. It's all been from us. COVID was bad, but was good in a way, because we had 2 years to sit there and tinker with it, and have things laser cut and build vacuum chambers for assembling sensors and all these other things.
Okay, good. Well, I got one more for you. I know you're busy, and then we'll wrap up. So I have to ask, how's business been for you guys? Obviously New York is always kind of hopping. And then what are you hearing from the marketplace? And the reason I ask is that, I'll have different people on that are from all walks of life, and I'm always curious on how they see business. You being on the testing side, I'm curious what your customers, if they're saying they're swamped or they're slowing or whatever the case may be. But first, how is building envelope testing doing? And then what are you seeing in the marketplace?
So, 2020 and 2021 were rough for us, just like they were for everyone else. And it carried into 2022, honestly, because material shortages, jobs kept getting put on hold, and dates kept getting pushed back. It was a crazy year. But around September last year, I really started to feel it breaking. We had our best March and April in the history of our company this year.
Wonderful.
And I'm really thrilled that we're right back where we were in 2019 again, which is key, because we lived through 9/11, and I was very vocal about people calling New York City dead a million times, and I said, you'll never kill this city.
No.
But this was not just our city, this was the whole world, and it was really disruptive. And I'm glad to see we came back from it. We're coming back from it. Are we going to hit a slowdown? Max, you and I have been around a long time. We always hit a slowdown eventually.
Yep.
Everything that goes up has to come back down. Yep. And that's why the renovation work, to me, seems so critical, because you can actually, with a lot of buildings, make the case for, it's very hard to pay back an energy efficiency upgrade. It takes a very long time. The building has to really be right. The worst thing we can do is set expectations very high and then not deliver, because people are never going to believe us then. And I think that if we get to that point where we have some incentives from the government, and there's a lot of money being earmarked for energy efficiency, and I think we'd be crazy as an industry not to take advantage and start chasing it right now. Yesterday, we should have been chasing it.
Yeah, especially with the changes to the Inflation Reduction Act that really opened it up for high performance glazing. It's right there. It's right there.
It is. And there's people still want to have good looking buildings, and glass, people have called glass dead for a long time. It's not. I wrote another LinkedIn article about glass and aluminum being the almost perfect building materials for modern buildings, and they are. They're great. They're easily accessible. They're inexpensive. They're easy to build with. They're fast. They have everything going for them, except they're not real good with energy. But we have technology that we developed here, that's been developed in Europe, to increase the performance of glass and aluminum, which are really ideal materials to build with. They last virtually forever. Wash the windows and clean the frames once a year.
Yeah.
You'll get 50, 60 years out of a curtain wall. And then you can reglaze it.
Yep.
And put caps on the outside. The aluminum does not degrade over 50 years. But we have to get past that whole, and it's not a myth. They're pretty bad insulators, but we can make them a hell of a lot better. And people are willing to sacrifice some of the performance as long as they have the look and bringing the outside in.
Yeah. Yeah. And taking advantage of the components that do improve the performance, like you're saying. Exactly. I mean, they're out there. You have to take advantage of it. So
yeah, VIG is one of them, high performance thermal brakes. There's other aerogels, all the other materials, and just sensible design.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes perfect sense. Well, this is good. I could go, I think I can go on and on with you for hours, but I know you're busy and I think I want to have you back eventually, or at least get you to things like BEC and Glass Build to share your message with even more people than will listen and watch this podcast. This was absolutely fantastic, Eliot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Max. I really enjoyed it.
And so I'm with Eliot Benor, managing member of Building Envelope Testing. See them online, www.bet-na.net. Great company, great person, and the guy knows it all. I feel like I've made a good new friend here, and I look forward to seeing you in person one of these days.
Thanks, Max. Look forward to it.
Thank you. All right, to wrap things up this month, I'm beyond thrilled. I know I say it with every guest, but these two guys, this is neat for me because these guys have come into the world, in the glass and glazing world, and have taken it by storm, and they're doing great work. Brandon Bellegarde, Tyler Falk, Drafting Marketplace. And you can find them online at draftingmarketplace.com. We're going to talk about what Drafting Marketplace is, what these guys do, how important it is in the industry. But guys, thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
thanks for having us.
Yeah, excited about
it. To me, it's a thrill, not only from the fact that you guys have the best beards in the industry, but I love the fact that you both have gotten into our world, and I know you've been in it for a while, and so don't let me dismiss that. You've been in it for a while, but I'm late to the party, and so I've finally gotten into the gospel of every great thing that you two are doing, and so let's talk a little bit about your backgrounds, where you came from, how you got into this. So Brandon, let's start with you. How did you find yourself, from point A to point B where we are now?
That's a great question. So I actually don't have a whole lot of time in this industry. My background is in process engineering, marketing, and software development. So I went to work for a startup in South Carolina and learned tons and experienced a lot in a very short period of time. And after that, I started my own software and marketing agency with one of the individuals that I was working with at that company. He and I have built multiple softwares. We've worked in marketing with companies across the country, and we take a certain percentage of our revenue each year and invest in some new idea. And Tyler called one day and was pretty frustrated with how things were going in the glass and glazing industry. He's been in this industry for a long time, and he voiced these frustrations. And I was like, man, we could fix this programmatically. We could fix this. We could make a solution that will actually fix these problems and improve the industry as a whole, generate more revenue. Like, this is a real opportunity we should take advantage of. So I went back to the office. I was driving down the highway actually, and went back to the office and immediately started drafting up a plan.
Nice. And we're going to talk about the marketing. It's no doubt that you could tell that there's some marketing skills there, because we're going to talk about that in a second. But Tyler, so you're past, and you look too young, too healthy, and too much hair to be in this industry for this long. So
well, that's the problem. I age myself as soon as I have to tell somebody how long I've been in it. So yeah, it's funny. My grandpa, I'm sure you're familiar with EFCO Corporation out of Monette. So that's about 10 minutes away from where Brandon and I grew up. We've known each other since our parents knew each other before we were born. So
great.
So we've been around each other for a while. But my grandpa, either the day or the day after I was born, he went to work for EFCO. Nice. And then he ended up retiring there later on. And then my dad actually he went a little bit after I was born to start working at FCO as well. And so he designed actually a couple of window systems there. And then he bounced around to different manufacturers in the industry, and then started his own drafting business. And then I kind of did some floor plans and stuff like that for him when I was in high school, kind of
Nice.
deal. And then, so high school, college, that's once I got out of college, I joined him. And then 2012 is when I started my own drafting business.
Okay.
So
Okay.
over 20 years I've been in it. So
Nice.
in the drafting form. So
And I didn't. I knew you guys were in that Missouri, area. I did not know the EFCO connection. So I mean, that's
Yep.
obviously a classic and important brand. So I didn't know that you had that
Yeah.
connection to that. Very cool. All right,
Yeah.
so you it's kind of like the peanut butter and the chocolate. You guys come together and you create this great thing where the software and the drafting angle, and you create Drafting Marketplace. Was it that simple? I mean, Brandon, you said you're driving down the highway. Tyler has this thought. You guys come together and you throw it together. But I know you had to really kind of map it out. Take me through the process of how exactly things came together, and now how does it work? Because I know people are going to go jump on draftingmarketplace.com, and those who haven't been on it, will go to it. Give us a rundown on how it all works.
Perfect. I'll start with some of the mapping out of the journey. What we do, we identify problems, and then we look for problems that we can solve programmatically. So when we first started talking about this, the very first step was, okay, who needs to be involved in this project and what problems are we going to solve? So we listed out our team, our developers, designers, and Tyler listed out industry problems that we could solve. And then we identified which ones we could solve programmatically. And then we prioritized those problems. We said, let's take the top 20% of those problems, solve for those, and then let's let the market mold the software based on their feedback. We'll take the software where it needs to go. Okay. So that's how we mapped it out. It did take a while. It's been in beta for years. We've been testing this for years, since 2017.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've had glazing contractors across the country and drafters across the country trying to break it. We have regular calls with people where we're like, break it.
Yeah.
We want you to try and break it. We'll find a solution to that problem. Right. So that was a big part of it. Tyler, you want to talk about how it works?
Yeah. So, basically some of those issues, being on the drafter side, I was like, feast and famine is kind of a term that we started using a lot, because as a drafter, I'd get covered up with work and then be like, golly, what's, get through all that. And then I'm like, I need some work. So, right. It was kind of like, rarely did I get in a nice, comfortable zone where I could, manage my schedule kind of on my time, really. And so that was one of the big things, is I was like, I need a place where, if I need work, I can go find work, and then I can, pick and choose. That was one thing too, is like, if I just want to do, storefront and curtain wall and not windows or, right. Panels or whatever, I want to be able to pick and choose that, but not knowing where the next job's coming from, it's kind of hard to say no sometimes. Basically the way it works is drafters, they create their profiles and they can get super extensive with those past projects. They can say these are my specialties. This is my, usual rate. They can adjust their, it's a bidding style of platform where they get to, pop in there, and if something fits their schedule, they can, shoot the number over and they understand. So glazing contractors create their profiles. And so essentially both sides have their profiles. When a glazing contractor needs shop drawings, they take all their architecturals, quote, any information that the drafter is going to need, they pop it on the platform. And then the drafters on the platform get to review all that information and ask questions if they need to. If something's unclear and it's going to affect their bid, they can ask questions. And then glazing contractors get to review once the bids come in to the glazing contractors. Then they can review all the drafters, see, their years of experience, what their style is, see if it's going to fit the glazing contractor's style
Nice.
that they like.
How many projects they've done on Drafting Marketplace,
Right.
past reviews from other glazing contractors that
Huge.
have worked
Yeah.
with them.
We have a review system. Yeah. So once the transaction's complete, each side reviews the other and says, here's what was good, here's what needs work. And we've actually, one of our goals is to better the industry. So we've got a private comment section where, there can be constructive criticism that doesn't just blast them, publicly. So we want to eliminate bad actors from both sides.
Yep.
And refine the industry in that way.
I think one of the important things to note is that, we are a kind of a kindness-based company, right? We believe in treating other people the way that we want to be treated. So that review system, we put a lot of thought into the review system. We want people to be able to transparently understand who they're working with.
Right.
But we also want both parties in the transaction to be able to help each other grow.
Yeah.
And we're putting a lot of faith in humanity in a time when maybe that's not the wisest decision to make. But we genuinely believe that, based off of our conversations with everyone we've met, that the people in this industry are good.
Yeah.
And we believe that there's this rift between glazing contractors and drafters, where drafters blame all their problems on glazing contractors, and glazing contractors blame all their problems on drafters. And we're trying to give them a platform, a venue to be able to work through that with each other, solve problems. We know that when people come together for some big, hairy, audacious goal, like a $14 million project, that it can either make them or break them. We're trying to give them the opportunity to grow and develop as human beings with each other and generate revenue at the same time.
Yeah, sure. There's a stress level, obviously, and I think you guys have recognized that. And I will say that, compared to other industries, I mean, the glass industry, we have better people than most, in my opinion. And obviously, I'm biased.
Pretty amazing.
But I really think that when push comes to shove, we have great people. Now, of course, we have bad actors on both sides. There's no doubt. But I do think we don't have as many as some other trades do and other industries do. So I think that's a good step. But so I think it plays right into your approach overall. So, I noticed at BEC, and that was the first time I really got to kind of know you guys. And I'd seen you before. You were extremely popular at that show. And it was like, my gosh, it was like a comet, like coming into, boom, these guys are like the man. So how overall, how's it all going for you? You mentioned that it's been in beta. You've got people, breaking it, but I know you're full and open for business right now. How's everything going?
Going well.
Good.
Each month we have more business or more users than what we had the month before.
Yeah.
We are genuinely just trying to make the best version of what we have. We're trying to make it as good as we can possibly make it. We're trying to solve problems. We have experience introducing product to market. We have more than 2 decades worth of experience of introducing product to market, introducing software to users. We understand we need to target early adopters first, then moderate to early, then moderate to late, and then late adopters. We know that if we don't follow that order, we're not going to get the business. We also know that this industry is filled with people who want to evolve the industry with regards to the technology they're using during the project, actually installation, fabrication, things like that, but they're lagging with regards to everything that leads up to the project. So how we collect the information, how we organize the team, how we manage the project itself. But so there's a gap there, and we're trying to address that. You have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, you nailed it, man.
Oh, that's what I mean.
Of course. And those who didn't come to BEC, and I interrupted the end of it, their take 5 was absolutely spectacular, incredibly creative. So
Thank you.
Great stuff. So breaking things up, a fun one for you guys. If you were stuck on a desert island and you had to live on a desert island and you could only take one thing with you, what would that be? Yeah.
This was the one I told Brandon, I was like, I'm good with all the questions except for that one. I don't know what I'm going to say.
It's a tough one. It
is. So I have some qualifying questions, if I may.
Please go for it.
Okay. So what part of the world is this desert island in? Are we going to have, what sort of minerals are we going to have around us?
I'm thinking kind of like a Tahiti,
Okay.
It's going to be warm. You know, I want to keep mixing up these fun questions. I can't keep asking people what their favorite food is, but we could go to that if you need
No,
to.
No.
So I mean, are there rules? Can I bring a satellite phone so I can call somebody to come get me?
There you go. That's it. Yeah, or to keep you busy at least. You
Well,
know?
he just broke the system. I was going to say I'd either bring a flint stick or a tarp.
Yep.
You know, I could get water with both of those. So it's a matter. Yeah.
See, I knew that you two, you know, as I was looking through, of course, I Googled fun podcast questions. And so and I'm like, this is perfect for these two because I know they'll come up with something and I know they'll have some witty banter for it. And you guys nailed it.
Yeah.
I knew you would. And for me, I don't know, you know, the common thing was, oh, you bring a book, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't know, you'd read the book and then you set the pages on fire to keep it warm and to eat.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a tough one. I hope none of us get stuck on a deserted island anytime soon.
Me too. I did just listen to the making of a podcast with Tom Hanks talking about the making of Castaway. So
Okay.
I got some good tips on them thinking through. So a tarp would be valuable. I'm gonna bring a tarp.
Very much so. And you got to find the volleyball and paint a face on it. Wilson, you got to have Wilson with you. I love it. All right, so back to Drafting Marketplace and the fun approaches that you guys take. Obviously, Brandon, you mentioned before you've got that marketing acumen. So this may play into this. I love what you guys do on social. Loved what you did at BEC. I mean, it is different. It is fun. It is eye catching. Is this coming from your marketing background? Or is this the two of you growing up and causing a whole bunch of trouble in Missouri? I mean, where does this marketing, you know, angle come from? Because it's awesome.
Well, I'll say that we've got a really awesome team. We'll start there. We also have, you know, Drafting Marketplace is new, but the powers behind Drafting Marketplace, they're not new, right? We've been doing marketing and working in this industry for more than 20 years. Tyler and I, we also just have we have a chemistry because we've known each other for so long. We really, I mean, we grew up, even as adults, there were periods of time where we would be on the phone with each other while working, not saying anything to each other, just like we're in the same room, like, oh yeah, did you see this or whatever? Every 15 minutes there's a comment. And so we joke that we're like two halves of the same brain. So that's super helpful.
Yep.
I mean, and we just try to be ourselves. One of the things that we've articulated to each other and our team is that we don't want to create a company that forces us to be something that we're not.
Yeah.
If we're able to create a company that allows us to be ourselves and that's successful, then we have happiness and financial stability.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tyler. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to build on that. You know, when we first started this stuff, obviously Brandon's marketing background, you know, and I have zero of that, and so my only option is to just be myself and hope that it works. And he's good at reminding me of that, because I'll get kind of where I'm trying to force it sometimes, and he's like, just don't, just do, do you, and it'll work. And so he's good at that. So
the word I was going to say that really kind of describes you guys and your approach is genuine. It really comes across as genuine. You genuinely are enjoying yourselves. You genuinely care. You're definitely genuine in all your interactions, and the interactions that I've been involved in. Like when I saw you at Texpo, and people started to crowd around you guys. You're genuine, and I like that, and I think that it shows. So absolutely kudos to you.
Thank you for that.
So again, I'm with Brandon Bellegarde, Tyler Falk, Drafting Marketplace. Check them out at draftingmarketplace.com. It is a very neat site, and it's a neat process to be able to kind of matchmake a little bit between the glazing contractor and the drafting community. And it does make a big difference, because I do know for years, that was one of the things that people are like, hey, do you have somebody that can do shop drawings, and then there was the whole, send it overseas sort of thing. And, you take your chances with somebody in the Philippines, and, and now this is a really neat setup that you two have created and built. But, it is one of those things where you both did say along the way that the glass industry is not exactly the quickest to adopt. I'll never forget, it was BEC, it was 2020, I believe, Joe Pushies, who was the past CEO at Apogee. put up a picture of a glacier during his presentation and said, "This is the glass industry and the way we adopt things." And it,
Yeah.
that is the speed that we adopt is glacial like. But so my question is as you've built this and from, and you're going, how much have you had to evolve? What have you had to change things? Have you had to mix things up? I mean, what's been the process been like to make sure that you're meeting everybody's needs?
That's a great question. Can I jump? Can I?
Please do.
Okay. All
Please
right.
do.
So a few things. One, we both grew up in a working class environment. We've worked our tails off. We were the kids that were up working a farm or construction or whatever before school and after school.
Right.
Like we know how to work and we know what it's like to at one point I took pride in the fact that I didn't have a cell phone, right? We understand that is a cultural thing. I now recognize the value of technology, and I have for quite a while. And it has changed my life and the life of the people around me. So I understand the value of that, and Tyler does too. We also recognize that we can dig our heels into the dirt and fight back against the evolution of technology and so society as a result, but that's not going to help us at all. What that's going to do is negatively impact us over the long term. That's where people get left behind. That's how people become archaic and no longer relatable for their clients or customers. That's where you effectively work yourself out of a job, but not in a good way.
Right.
So this path is coming, whether people want to deal with it or not. With regards to evolving or our approach, adaptation, we as I said earlier, we mapped out what we believed were, as close as we could get to 100% of the problems that we could solve programmatically.
Right.
And the adaptation that we've had to make is actually the speed in which we add certain technologies.
Okay.
Right? We need to add technologies more and faster because people are asking for them, and we didn't think they would ask for them for a couple of years.
Interesting.
And now, so now what we're having is, we're actually going to be introducing a new module in August, the beginning of August. We'll introduce a new module, and we'll push that module all the way up to glass build. And that's when we go to glass build, that's what we're going to be promoting. But it's a module that'll allow people to source engineering services as well.
Nice.
And that, just the speed in which we're doing that, that's an adaptation that we didn't anticipate making.
Yeah, we had plans for the different modules. I mean, obviously anything that required that was the reason for drafting Marketplace and not like glass and glazing Marketplace. We want to be the go-to site or platform for anything drafting.
Sure.
In the construction industry. So we had those modules that we wanted to introduce and we had planned on, but like the engineering part, that's one of our regular questions is, do you guys have engineering? And that's coming from engineers and glazing contractors as well. So, obviously that's something that we need to address because of the feedback that we're getting. And like he was talking about, just opening our ears to, if they're fighting it or if they're digging their heels in,
why and how can we
help? Yeah, exactly. How would you make it better? And what's keeping you, what would keep you from using it? And what are your needs? And so that's kind of we've kind of got some pivot and adjustment worked in to the plan so that we can make it what people need.
On top of that, we have a report issue that we encourage people to use. It's a button on our platform that we encourage people to use, not just for issues, but if they have an idea, oh man, if you guys did this, it would help me here. And if the demand is high enough, we don't over-engineer solutions that occur for problems that occur 4% of the time. But if the demand is high enough, we're pushing those things, and so we encourage that, and we have demos nonstop. I mean, right after this call, we're jumping straight into demos for the day. So people are interested, people are jumping on. I think that once people really start seeing that this is something that they can trust and rely on, then I mean, we won't be able to we'll just jump on the train and ride along with everyone.
Yeah, no, I think it's more of a rocket ship versus a train.
Awesome.
There's no doubt, and and it is interesting because I do think that the natural progression would be drafting leading into engineering, just because they seem to be almost hand in hand sometimes, and it's good that you again, that's exactly what I was wondering. Did you where did you have to pivot? Where did you have to maneuver? And that makes a lot of sense. And I love it. You broke some news here. It's coming soon. This is exciting.
Yeah, you're the first, actually, the first place we've broken this news.
This is cool. This is cool. I'm honored by that. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we're honored to be here.
Yeah. So Brandon and Tyler, Drafting Marketplace. Make sure you're checking them out at draftingmarketplace.com. It's a great setup, great site. I just it's just one of those things that I really think that you have kind of reached into an area that we needed that help. You recognized it and you've created a nice little platform for it. And I love that it's actually worked both into your skill sets. I mean, Tyler's, history and skills on that side, Brandon, your skills within the entrepreneurial side of things and marketing. And the fact that you guys are best friends from growing up is a great story. This is awesome.
Well, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, we're gonna make a movie, write a book. It's gonna be great.
No one will watch it except for our moms.
There's no, I can't even figure out the actors who would play you though. You're too, that's the problem.
Ryan Reynolds for me, obviously.
Joe
Pesci for me.
Joe Pesci. You know what? I would buy the movie just for Joe Pesci and Ryan Reynolds as the leading. Just to have them as the leads, I'd buy that movie. Goodfellas meets Wrexham, sort of thing. That'd be
right.
Goodfellas, Daredevil, or not Daredevil, Deadpool. Goodfellas and Deadpool together. I love it. I love it. All right. So one more question to go. And it's always, I ask pretty much everyone this, and where I find it interesting to ask people like you who are kind of a little bit on the outside is, my question is how you're seeing business in the industry, in with the market and the economy. There's so many worries out there, and we all listen to the same and find the same indexes of what we're looking at in the rest of 23 and 24. I know you're probably getting feedback from both sides, from your drafters and from your glazers. What are people saying? Are they feeling, cautious about 2024, excited? What's the feeling that you guys are getting from your customer base?
That's a really solid question. So I'm going to start with just some hardcore facts, cold facts here. We know that inflation is at a 5% rate right now. We know that in the 80s it was much higher than that, but this isn't the 80s. This is a completely different socioeconomic environment. We anticipate that the inflation rate will be between 3 and 4% by the end of the year. We may have one more interest hike if we're lucky. We also know that the amount of debt that every single American has on average, we know that has increased by 20% since COVID, effectively leaving every man, woman, and child with around $50,000 worth of debt. Now we know that not every man, woman, and child has that debt, so it's balanced out differently. So there are a lot of people with more debt and a lot of people with less debt. That impacts their desire to purchase. We also know that we have a war a global war that is impacting inflation. We know that we have all these economic factors that are occurring. On top of that, we have a workforce that has been working really hard to try and keep up with the Joneses, to try and keep up with all these social demands, and they're burned out. They're crispy. And so they want remote work. They're quietly quitting. We have all these things happening. We know that the United States needs to employ 70,000 new jobs a month to maintain status quo. Economists are saying that we're going to have between 125 and 150,000 jobs each month moving forward for the rest of the year. So that's kind of our average. That's where we normally are. So I think that jobs are going to increase, or going to stabilize rather. It's going to be difficult to find a job. It's going to be, but we'll be at that average that the United States needs. All of these things will impact the amount of building that is done. Yeah. And it will force glazing contractors to reduce to make budget cuts. Yeah. And those budget cuts are going to happen in places that are painful. We anticipate that some of those places will be, and I don't want to be an alarmist, but we anticipate some of those places will be in the form of staff.
Yeah.
And so we think that we're positioned well to be able to absorb any staff that gets laid off, as well as help glazing contractors make up for that gap. So that is a big part of the timing of what we're doing. You know, this sounds really arrogant, but in 2017, I got a group of people together in my home, and I said, "Hey, this is around the same time that we're planning all this." I was doing a lot of economic research and things like that. I said, something is going to happen economically. I don't know what the straw will be that will break our economic back, but something is going to happen, and we're going to have to be prepared for that. And everyone thought I was crazy, but here we are. And so this is where I think it's going. I think we'll have a slowdown, but I think the innovation will allow us to move forward. Now, that innovation is going to come from those early adopters and moderate to early adopters. One of the things that we hear from people that like, well, my grandpa wanted to use this. My grandpa did this with that. Like, actually, if your grandpa only cared about his people and the profitability of his company, he would use whatever resources he had available. And at the time, he didn't have these resources, which is why he.
Right.
Yeah. That's my perspective.
And as you know, Max, I mean, the glass and glazing industry, as far as my expertise, usually it's a little bit, it's almost like because of the the project backlog that they're working on, you've got bids out, you're working on projects that are going to take a little bit of time. It seems to, the effects of the economy seem to hit us a little bit tardy than everybody else. And so we're hoping that with the way we're positioned, people have time to see what, at least on our end, what we're offering, as far as, like Brandon said, that being able to absorb those issues
before they're forced to do it.
Before they're forced to, for sure. Yeah.
So. No, that's huge. And Brandon, to your point, and it might be my memory playing tricks on me, but pre-COVID, early in 2020, I think the signs were there that we were in trouble from a financial standpoint, that the economy was heated up so much that it was not sustainable. COVID obviously threw that all into a complete different realm. But I do think you were right looking at it in 2017, seeing, that we're headed into a different path. So it's obviously you're ahead of the game with that. So that's an interesting point. And Tyler, to your point, no doubt the whole backlog thing is does kind of protect us a little bit, but it also, it should give everybody at least enough of a heads up that you need to prepare, and you need to be proactive. And I love the fact that you can get, as a business owner, you can be diverse enough, and that you have services like the drafting marketplace out there that you can now lean on, and you're not paying benefits, and you're not having that extra headcount sort of thing. And I don't, I'm not promoting to fire swaths of people.
Neither are we.
Right, and I know you're not, but it is nice that you guys have created a great service, and also a service that is a competitive service too. So like you were saying, you're getting multiple bids, and this is a good way for everybody to kind of compete on a good level playing field. And I love it. Yeah, awesome. Absolutely. So again, the website is draftingmarketplace.com. And this is Brandon I will pronounce it correctly this time. Brandon Belgard. Okay.
That's right.
And this is Max Perelstein, for you've never heard me say that. Brandon Belgard. So he and I have something in common. We'll have to bring that up on a different pod. And Tyler Falk. And I didn't even ask. I'm pronouncing that correctly too. Falk. I'm not screwing that
perfect. Right. Just like in our industry, caulk. Just like caulking, but it's just with an F.
See, you guys in the marketing. This is a whole thing. That's a whole nother thing I could see coming all over my LinkedIn here soon. It'll be hilarious too. I love it. Drafting Marketplace, you guys are absolute rock stars, and
thank you.
I look forward to seeing you guys in Atlanta at Glass Build, and just keep doing what you're doing. Looking forward to the engineering side of things, and really pumped to see what happens in the future with both of you guys and Drafting Marketplace. Thanks for doing the pod.
Thanks, Max.
Thanks, Max. Absolute pleasure.
Cheers.
Thanks. All right, that wraps things up for this month. Thrilled to have the group that we had. Honest was fantastic. Eliot is just an absolute riot, and I just enjoyed the heck out of that, and can never go wrong with the guys from Drafting Marketplace. That was super. So all good there. As I do each and every month, quick run through what I'm watching. One was Jury Duty. Tom O'Malley, the great Tom O'Malley, the most popular guy in the industry, gave that one to me and said he checked it out. I enjoyed it as well. Good stuff. If you're not, that's on Amazon Prime. Also on Amazon Prime, Citadel. It's a pretty adventurous little thing, quick, empty calorie sort of thing, but it's a good treadmill show, in my opinion. And then for a little bit of a deeper dive and a little rough, a little raw, John Mulaney, the comedian, has a special on Netflix, Baby J, it's called. He's had a really interesting life and career coming out of rehab. This special talks about him going through an intervention and dealing with rehab and so on. And funny guy, deep subject, handled it pretty well, a little raw, but good stuff. At least I thought so. So check that out. That one is on Netflix. That's it for this month. I think if all goes well, we'll have a special mid-month podcast here coming soon to talk about one specific subject, and then back next month with a powerhouse setting a guest again. I'm really fortunate, really getting lucky with some great people wanting to do the podcast. I'm honored by that. Thank you so much for listening, for watching, and supporting. It means a ton, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.
Oh, the music is stopped.